This is my Eagle, and in a few weeks' time, we're taking it on an adventure to the Alps. So we can do sensible things like this. But before we can do that, we have to get this thing ready.
And in the last episode, we began that process. After years and years of being forgotten, even longer than I thought, we got the car running and driving. And it was only a little bit sketchy. And since then, I've continued the recommissioning process. It now has brakes, because apparently they're important. And it also now has lights. Again, quite important, so I've been told. But the goal of today's episode is to make this thing look good and transform it from a slightly confused, ugly duckling into a proper 80s supercar looker. Oh, and look at that. How convenient. A whiteboard has arrived. Come on. Okay, so here is the plan. Step 1, remove the very, very ugly bumpers, which totally spoil the lines of this car. Step 2, remove some other slightly questionable choices. Step 3, strip this whole thing down. Step 4, change the whole color of the car. And finally, step 5, refit everything and maybe even get these doors to fit properly. Because that panel gap isn't very good. So, let's do this.
So the rear bumper is certainly the least offensive of the two, but even so, I still think it will look a lot better without it. And thankfully, a couple of bolts and one wood screw later, it was off. And look at that. Pretty cool if you ask me. But now for the worst offender. Time to remove the Eagle's overbite.
Air intakes.
And after unplugging the indicators, which will need relocating, let's take a look. To me, this already looks so much better. It's just sort of not disrupted in the same way. It doesn't feel like there's an afterthought hanging off the front. And on the subject of afterthoughts, I'm sorry, but I think the Eagle has to go. Much better. It sort of looks like an Eagle Pigeon hybrid, which isn't really fitting with the look I want for this car. Anyway, let's get this thing completely stripped down.
Yeah. Yeah. That's literally just a piece of rubbish wood in there.
Oh, just holding it together.
Yeah.
And well, look at that. With a lot of the 80s knickknacks removed from the car, it's starting to look pretty cool if you ask me. I've always thought the Eagle was a pretty good looking machine. I know a lot of you guys disagree, but I hope you can see underneath all of that bizarreness, there is quite a cool silhouette. And now with the car weighing about 50% less, let's get this thing cleaned up, ready for its colour change.
Have you ever wondered why you keep getting spam calls, junk mail, or creepy ads that know way too much about you? That is because data brokers are collecting and selling your information. Everything from your home address to your phone number to details about your family. They'll sell it to anybody who wants it. These profiles don't end up just getting used for advertising. They can end up on search sites where anybody can look up your information. This means scammers, stalkers, or identity thieves can get hold of your sensitive information in seconds. And removing yourself manually from these sites takes hundreds of hours, and you have to do it over and over again. But that is where Incogni come in. They contact over 230 data brokers on your behalf to get your information removed. But they don't stop there, they make sure it stays removed with repeated requests. All you do is sign up, give them the bare minimum information to help them find your profile, and they'll do the hard work and keep you up to date on their progress. I tried it myself, and within weeks, I saw my personal data be removed from multiple sites. It's risk-free, and they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Use my link down below in the description and my code Hudson for 60% off an annual plan. Use Incogni today to protect you and your family from these crazy data risks.
The Eagle always looks remarkably good in pictures and videos, but it is actually filthy. It did sit in a barn for years and years, so there is junk in every crevice. If you'll pardon the pun. Already a huge amount better, but there's still a lot more cleaning that needs to be done. So it's foam time. But whilst you watch the classic satisfaction of watching the car get covered in whipped cream, it seems like a good time to talk a little bit about the adventure the car is going to go on. So I've been working on classic cars for many, many years, but the one thing I find is that's all I do. I work on them, and I don't really tend to enjoy them, take them on trips, all of the fun things that one should be doing, and that's something I want to change. Ultimately, the best way to get to know a car is to take it on a long, long journey, put it through its paces, understand what it can and can't do, and sort of build a relationship with the car, and make some memories. So with that in mind, we're going to turn the Eagle into the most unlikely adventure vehicle. We're going to get it prepped with some proper winter tyres and sort some sort of storage, not on the roof, because a roof rack wouldn't really work with these doors, but something of that sort. And I also want to add some rally-themed paraphernalia. Think light pods, that sort of thing. Then we'll load her up with gear, skis and all of that fun stuff, and take her to the Alps. Now, of course, there's a bunch of other very practical modifications, including heating, reducing mist inside the car, all of that sort of thing. We'll deal with all of that. That's going to be all part of the fun of this build over the next few weeks. Oh, and a slightly more comfortable interior might be welcomed. And there we have it, a gleaming, bold bird of prey. So the next thing on the agenda is to change the colour. Now, usually I paint things. That's something I feel quite comfortable with. But today, we're going for something slightly different. We're going to wrap the car, which is something that you should do only if you've got a lot of experience, or you've done it before, which, well, we haven't. So this is going to be a challenging process, no doubt. But, you know, it's all about trying new things on this channel and giving things a go on your own. So we'll see how it turns out. Now the final bits to remove are the bonnet, the boot and the doors, and then we are ready to wrap. Another tricky thing that only occurred to me during this process is, other than those panels, This car has no panel gaps. Now usually panel gaps are a bit of a saving grace with wrapping cars because you can tuck excess material in. But with this, it was basically just one giant panel. So not the best car to start with. But with the Eagle reduced to its 5 component parts, it's time to check in with me from the past.
Okay, so there we go. The Eagle is stripped. And I have to say, the removal of the bumpers, in my opinion, I think made it look so much better. It looked a lot less disrupted and looked like a proper supercar, dare I say. But aside from that, everything is off the car that we need to wrap it. It's really hard to convey over video because the paint looks so good on video. I don't know why, but it's not. So there is so many scuffs, scratches, weird fiberglass mess, but I don't want to respray the whole thing. I do like the red. So the best solution seemed to be wrapping it. It will also allow us to lean into this Alpine adventure. And on that note, the wrap, what you've all been waiting for. What color are we going? Well, as I say, I'd like to lean into our upcoming adventure, and my friends at Vinyl Frog have kindly sent this film for us. I've linked them down below. They have a huge range of amazing different colors. But today I have gone for white. We're going full 1980s Arctic white. I'm thinking a red interior. You'll see that soon, and that's still up for debate. But yeah, let's turn this into an Arctic 80s cocaine adventure mobile. Maybe don't put the cocaine bit.
After getting everything unpacked and reviewing the gear, it seems like a good time to give you a few bits of advice that I've learnt about wrapping. The first thing is, you should probably do this inside. The second thing is, you probably shouldn't do this on gravel. But if you are doing it outside and on gravel, don't pick an incredibly windy day. It tends to make things a little bit harder. But as always, we had no choice but to soldier on. So, with the help of my friend Alex, we got cracking. Okay, so far so good. We'd got the main flat portion of the bonnet on, but now it's time for the edges, and this is where the skill really does come in. I have to say, I really have to hand it to those who did this as a profession or have this skill set. It is very, very tricky. But with a few slightly ugly, crunchy seams later, we got there. But now this was the hard bit. The vents. Well, sort of faux vents. We had to use a lot of heat and basically just push them in. This wasn't maybe the proper method. I'm not sure what the proper method is. Maybe infill it. But we got there in the end and only burnt through occasionally. By no means was this a fantastic job or anywhere near the word fantastic, but I was still pleased. It was smooth and it looked good where it counted. And I really do like trying new things, and if you don't try, you'll never learn. But we couldn't relish in the fact that we didn't butcher one panel for long. It was time to go on to the next. So this is where things get tricky. Like I said before, the car doesn't have panel gaps, it's just one giant piece of fiberglass. So we're having to sort of create our own panel lines, and in this case we decided to do the whole front wing, which also is quite a large panel and has lots of bizarre angles and curves, so this would certainly be testing our limited skill set. But after a good couple of hours and accidentally butchering a portion of it, which I discreetly covered with a sticker, comment if you can see it, it was now time to do the hardest thing so far. Cut out and shrink the wrap to fit in the headlight insert. Now, the ribs on the bonnet were one thing, but this is a lot deeper and an even more awkward shape. So, let's see how this goes. But after lots of heat and careful finessing, I was so pleased with how this thing turned out. Yes, nowhere near the level of a professional, but it looked clean, and I was really happy with the results of day one. Yes, it was slightly slow. You know, we'd got 2 panels done and sort of ended up with a Phantom of the Opera style car, but we'd done it ourselves and it wasn't looking half bad.
Okay, so that is the end of day one wrapping the car. Nobody said wrapping cars is easy, but it is much harder than I thought. This is 5.5 hours worth of work. Yeah, 5.5 hours to do one wing and the bonnet. The wing I think definitely was easier than the bonnet, but they were both pretty miserable. And now I'd say that's about a quarter of the car, maybe. We'll see. But anyway, we'll continue tomorrow. Cool.
As you can probably tell by that clip, I was slightly exhausted, even after just doing 2 panels. But with day 2 upon us and a renewed sense of enthusiasm and a very, very fancy new necklace, it was time to take on the biggest challenge yet. The rest of the whole bloody car. But today we are not only armed with myself and Alex, we're also armed with Steve as well, whose wrapping experience matches mine and Alex's. Well, actually, Alex and I now have a day of wrapping experience, so I guess you could say we're quite professional. But yeah, we were certainly the team for the job. And the experience from day 1 certainly did show. Sort of. Well, what I mean by that is we got this first wing done very, very quickly, and it set a tone that I thought we'd follow for the rest of the day. We were going to fly through this thing. We were going to get the whole thing finished. But I was wrong. We'll talk about that later. Enjoy a very hard day's worth of work.
reminds him. Don't worry, it's not gonna, I won't need reminding. Okay, so that is the end of day 2, and I'm on the verge of having a pretty severe sense of humour failure. A lot of it is done. The hardest panel, one of them is done, and that was enough to send Steve home. But we're getting there. There's still a bunch of finishing stuff, sort of bunching around the bottom. I need to take the wheel off to be able to sort that. But we're getting there. Sort of. See you tomorrow.
With day 3 upon us, I was feeling slightly stressed. This video was due to go out in just a few hours' time, and what I was looking at was a sort of quarter, half-wrapped car. So, yeah, things weren't looking good. But, as always, I had no choice but just to keep on going. The next few hours were a blur of caffeine, swearing, and accidentally nicking my fingers with a craft knife every 2 minutes. This process certainly had been a huge test of my patience, and like I said earlier in the video, I have a huge amount of respect for people who have this skill set. It really is tricky, and I'm glad I've tried it, but I don't think I'll be trying it again anytime soon. But in my moment of need, it was time to call on a pro, my wife Leah.
It's just to introduce you to the video.
All right. Hey.
This was exactly the support I needed for this final push. We wrapped and we wrapped long into the evening.
Do you like rapping?
Do I? Boom, 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 bitch, I'm the hottest on the beat, you.
But then daylight was lost, so I went into the night. But by the next morning, the eagle had been reborn. Even with all of the imperfections from our limited wrapping skills, this car looked so cool. Let me just take you back and remind you how this car looked just 3 days ago. Yeah, of course it wasn't a wreck, but in comparison to how it looks now, I think it's transformed it. It now looks like a proper 80s head turner. Of course, there are still a few bits I need to tidy up. I need to get the door gaps better. I need to finish wrapping the boot, but I just couldn't bring myself to wrap anything else today. I also need to figure out how to avoid melting the wrap around the exhaust, which unfortunately happened as soon as I fired the car up. But with all of that said, I was still so pleased with how this had turned out.
Well, what a few days it has been. But there you go, the car is now wrapped in its new cocaine spec, 80s spec, and I do really, really like it. I have to say this has been such a hard job to achieve. There's lots of things, I'm a strong believer in taking things on, trying new things and learning these skills. But wrapping, my gosh, that is a skill. I have to hand it to the people at Vinyl Frog. The quality of the film is fantastic. If I can get these results as a complete beginner, then imagine what you can do if you've got a bit of experience under your belt. So a huge thank you to them for sending the film out. And even with my very limited ability, I'm so pleased with how this thing looks. It looks just so of the time, and it's so ridiculous. I love it. But with that said, will I ever be wrapping a car again? No, leave it to the professionals. That is a job best left to them. An interesting thing to mention as a fiberglass car enthusiast, vinyl wrap seems a great solution. Obviously, there's so many things that are very difficult to get out in bodywork, and the vinyl wrap does do a very good job at sort of flattening those areas out. It's not perfect by any stretch. If you look at the roof, I don't know if you can see it, there's some big mounting points underneath the fiberglass which show through, but the vinyl wrap has done a great job at sort of leveling those out. So if you do have a fiberglass car, wrapping might be a very good option for you. Well, that is as long as you don't ask me to do it. But there we have it. We are well on the way to getting the Eagle ready for its adventure. In the next episode on the Eagle, we are going to start preparing it from a more practical point of view for its adventure. We've got the looks down, and now it's time to add a bunch of modifications to help it handle the terrain, and maybe a few silly modifications as well, because one must. And for the fans of the Nova, as you know, you got a very big update just a few days ago with a very exciting engine reveal. And in a few days' time, you get another very exciting update where we attempt to make the chassis capable of handling the new engine's horsepower, which I know a lot of you guys were concerned about. So lots of fun to come. If you enjoyed this episode, and even if you didn't, please do like, share, subscribe, comment down below, all that sort of thing. It really does help me out, enables me to keep making interesting, silly, fun videos on certainly very silly cars like this. If you'd like to support the channel further, I've linked my Patreon down below. Over on the Patreon, we have behind the scenes access, early access, all of that sort of thing. Another great way to support the channel is merchandise. We have Nova t-shirts, linked down below. All proceeds go straight into the cars. But enough of all that, I'm just very grateful that you're here watching. But with that, until next time, take care, and I will see you then.